Hello YouTube, today we're going to be talking about the Northern Pacific North Coast Limited. I just have recently acquired the whole set that would be more or less prototype variation. You know, gauge just gets to be a long train, so obviously I'm not modeling every single car of the North Coast Limited, but it's a variation of it, and for the most part it has everything that the North Coast Limited mainly had. Starting out with the F units, these are Lionel F3s, come out in 1996. Numbering's not correct on them, so I don't know if I'm going to tackle that or not. I haven't decided yet, but yeah, they look pretty streamlined though compared to a lot of the newer Fs, but so these are like based on the post-war. But anyways, the livery's mostly correct. The green's a little lighter when it comes to the MTH set, but we're going to roll it ahead now. We'll start with the first car, water baggage. And this water baggage here is actually prototype, number 407. Most Northern Pacific had the offset of the Northern, and then the Pacific was, I think, back here usually, yep. And that would have been a water baggage, but this one is actually correct 407, so if I'm modeling, you know, mid-60s, two of these were destroyed in two accidents in 1962, and then 407 and another regular baggage were converted to water baggage cars. So this one's actually prototype. The NP lettering is correct on it for 407. So if you're modeling earlier 62, this would not be a water baggage. It was more or less a storage baggage kind of car for Main Streeter service. Anyways, here's the baggage car. The North Coast Limited usually had one on their consist. Second one, the RPO and dormitory. It was on the North Coast Limited. So, but MTH did a pretty good job. These are MTH cars. I'm sorry, 70-foot in O gauge, so they're not full length. But thank goodness, because these are huge in O. They're about 18 inches. But this is the RPO. The male correct, but apartment is mostly correct. This is supposed to be a dormitory, not a baggage car, but I think it's based on a different dormitory style by Pullman Standard. Northern Pacific did own Pullman Standard baggage, or RPOs too, but they never had this consist. This would have been the dormitory for the crew, so it would have had windows in it instead, but for my use, it is technically still the dormitory because the RPO faced the front of the car, and the the dormitory was towards the rear. And usually right after that, we have the dome coach, the first dome coach, and MTH got it wrong on in the dome part here, but otherwise, most of the seating is probably correct. I could detail it more. MTH included figures. I had to renumber this one though to one of the coach numbers, 552. They decided to name all of them in sleeper numbers, which is wrong. So I had to correct two of these cars to make it actually correct. So it is correct for coach number, and for the most part, they did a good job. Yeah, that's coach number one. Then second, they had another coach, usually a day-night coach was number 2 here, and I had to renumber that one to be correct. So it's a day-night coach. And then this one is dome number 2. So usually the Northern Pacific, under McFarlane, had dome, car, dome to spread out the cars. Towards the late 60s, this was not held up to the standard, but during McFarlane's time and most of the North Coast Limited's career, the domes were separated by one car that was not a dome. So then we have dome coach number 2. So this is a variation. So technically, we'd have to have another limited run coach, and then I think there's 2 more coaches we'd have to have, and then the Lewis and Clark Traveler's Rest, which MTH did not make. So and that usually sat about here, depending on what era you're modeling. And then there was the diner, and this is the diner, so that's correct. So then your diner goes here. And then we get into sleepers, so there'd be another 864 sleeper, but instead, the back half of the train is all sleepers. So this is a dome sleeper. And technically it's set up in coach configuration. I haven't decided if I'm going to take the endeavor of cutting it all out, putting sleeping in, but this is a dome sleeper. So it would have been a 444 compartment dome sleeper and free seating on the top. So next would have been another 864 sleeper, and I don't know what variation MTH is up for this sleeper, but it's a sleeper nonetheless. Decorated fairly nice. Numbering's correct on it. It's supposed to have the Northern Pacific on the top. Obviously, it doesn't fit. We have Dome Sleeper number 2, and it's important to note that the North Coast Limited had 4 domes at all times. 2 coach domes and 2 sleeper domes. Unless you're modeling a winter consist, depending on what era, especially in the 60s, they would drop a dome in the winter time when there was less travel. But usually in the summer they had a lot more cars. And then your observation. So we're missing probably about 3 cars in this consist that would be prototype. But this is already a 11 car train. Yeah, I'm only missing 3 cars because 14 cars would have been the length of the North Coast Limited. And this barely fits my layout. So luckily I do have the full set. And then here's the dome lounge observation. This one's set fairly correctly for being a shorter car, but it has the double bedrooms, which were accurate on the North Coast Limited for the sleeper, and then we have the buffet and lounge in the rear of the train. So, another thing to point out is the Northern Pacific never had these lights above the dome. That was not ever in their planning, but you know, aesthetically it looks really nice, and maybe they should have. So I personally will probably leave it because it looks cool, and that's kind of a streamliner staple on most. And mind you, the CB&Q, once the North Coast Limited ran on the CB&Q, they had to add a Mars light at the end for, you know, emergency braking. So, and that went down here by the coupler on that train. So, and then it is lit up at the back. I know it's really hard to see on camera, so I'll cut the power here quick so we can take a look at that feature. So it's lit up for the North Coast Limited, and MTH originally had this as 393, and most, depending on what era, especially the 60s, I'm modeling the 60s, we'd have a Northern Pacific Railway on the back, but since I don't want to go through the hassle of changing the monad on the back here, I just decided to renumber it 394, which Bill Kubler said in his book went all of its career without having its back end changed, so it just kind of kept its old North Coast Limit, and that's the old monad. But very, very nice feature on this train. And that's the MTH North Coast Limited set. There's a full dome too. I'm currently working on that, but technically the Northern Pacific never had it, so we're not running it in this consist for this video to demonstrate the full set. And also, I'm supposed to have one more F unit. The Northern Pacific had 3 F3, F7s, or an F9 diesel, and they usually had 3 of them. Depending on time of year and what have you, sometimes 4, sometimes 2, depending on what area you're modeling. So, yeah, I have only 2, but I'm kind of glad because this is a big, very heavy, long train on this layout, and it's already pretty much maxed out. Anyways, we're going to run the train now, and I'm going to be quiet.